7 o'clock. I will call the Tuesday, September 26th meeting of the Common Council to order. Ms. Baker of Noblesville Main Street, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lees, will you call the roll?
Mr. Ayer,
Present.
Mr. Boyce,
Present.
Mr. Davis,
Present.
Mr. O'Connor,
Present.
Mr. Peterson,
Here.
Mr. Schwartz,
Present.
Mr. Sparks,
Present.
Ms. Wiles,
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from our September 12th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our September 12th meeting. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. President, I would like to amend the agenda. Sorry. Passed out there for a minute. Change the title of ordinance 340923 to council to consider ordinance 340923 and ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance 621295 and the Saxony Corporate Campus Ordinance 030220 and all amendments thereto, a part of the comprehensive master plan for the city of Noblesville, Hamilton County, Indiana.
Everything else is submitted?
Yes.
Yeah, everything else is submitted.
Can I get a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to amend the agenda, changing the title of ordinance number 34-09-23 to council to consider ordinance number 34-09-23 and ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance number 62-12-95 and the Saxony Corporate Campus Ordinance number 03-02-20 and all amendments thereto, a part of the comprehensive master plan for the city of Noblesville, Hamilton County, Indiana. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0.
Mr. President, I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Petitions or comments by citizens who are present. I do not have any, but if you wish to speak, there are comment cards out those doors, and you can hand them to Ms. Lees, and then we will call you up when your item is up for discussion. Moving on to council committee reports. Downtown District Committee, Ms. Wiles.
Yes, Mr. President. The Downtown District Committee met on Wednesday, September 20th. Brian Ayer, Darren Peterson, Aaron Smith, and myself were present, along with several of our staff members. Also, we had a guest, Mr. Jason Pearson, who is one of the organizers of the Front Porch Music Festival, came to give a report and praise and thanks for staff here in Noblesville for their help and support, especially Operations Manager Renee Gully from the Street Department for all that she did, but as well as the Mayor's Office, Fire Department, Police Department. They estimate that they had about 8,000 attendees this year in their second year of the Front Porch Music Festival. So it really is growing, and lots of positive comments and feedback from that event. So he is very appreciative of the support that he's received from the city, both financially from a grant as well as the support of the departments. Aaron Head gave a report on the status of funds. We currently have $893,689.99 in the Downtown Development Fund, but approximately $441,000 is encumbered. So we still have funds available to direct towards additional projects. We don't really have any of those projects on the board for this year, but we're saving up for future projects, especially with the Downtown Streetscape Plan. We did talk Main Street Design Committee, and Kate may talk a little bit about this later, but we're working in conjunction with Noblesville Main Street on this design committee, and there's some ideas that are being considered. And so we had some discussion about that, and that we will continue to have further discussion of working with Main Street and making some different or potential identities for the downtown. But all of that needs to be incorporated into our downtown streetscape plan as well. There was a brief update regarding the Bridge of Flowers. We also talked about the 3 4-way flashers that are hopefully going to be installed soon. Mr. Rodewall said that the bids came in about $392,000. When we had $400,000 allocated for it, so we're in good shape there, but there is a significant lead time before those can be installed. So hoping that that can be done in the spring of 2024.
Are we waiting for poles?
That I don't know. But we want to make sure, especially the intersection by Seminary Park is completed before the Peony Festival in May. And so we're doing the best that we can do that. We also talked through about some decorative crosswalks and being able to install some of those decorative crosswalks there by Seminary Park with that four-way flasher, as well as the other locations with the four-way flashers. We've been investigating the idea of changing over our street sign, the name of the streets from green to black, to go with the black street lights, because we need to make sure we've got all of that together. It's still a work in progress, so that will be probably incorporated into the downtown streetscape plan. And then Mrs. Reed gave us some development project updates on Lofts on 10th Street, Federal Hill Apartments, as well as the East Bank project. And then Mr. Rodewald shared with us an update from NDOT regarding the State Road 32 project, that due to budget challenges, the phasing of the project has been pushed back. So phase 1 is scheduled to begin in early 2024, hopefully completed by June 1st. That will be work that begins at 16th Street and works west of 10th Street. And then they will continue to work along State Road 32, trying to minimize disruption, but that will be happening in 2024. That's it.
Any questions for Ms. Wiles? If not, we will move on to Finance Committee. Mr. O'Connor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance Committee met September 21st. A number of these items are on the agenda, so I will allow the presenters to get into the detail, but we discussed the buy down of the Pleasant Street Phase 2 and 3 bonds with the wheel excise tax, which is approximately $2.3 million, so that'll reduce the bond debt on those portions of the bonding for the Pleasant Street project, which is what we had intended to do with that from the get-go. So that's where those dollars are going to go. We talked about the Levinson Garage bond payment, which either gets paid from the TIF revenue from the Levinson and/or the local income tax. At this point, the TIF revenue isn't sufficient to cover the payments, so we're using LIT to offset the difference. I think that was expected initially, and as the TIF revenue builds, we'll use less of the local income tax to service that debt. But the salary ordinance was introduced, comes with a favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee, and I'll let Ms. Ramon opine or discuss that with us this evening. It's on the agenda. Talked about the one-year bond sale, Series A and B. There'll be two series, an A series, which is covered by the controlled project statute, and then the B series is related to road improvements, so it's not affected by the controlled project statute. So that's the reason for the two issues, but as we all know, the reason for the one-year bond is to maintain our tax rate of $1.10. Talked about the high levy growth appeal, which is moving forward. I believe that's on the agenda as well. And of course, the 2024 Civil City budget, which comes to you with a favorable recommendation from the Finance Committee, and I will leave it at that. And the claims come to you with a favorable recommendation as well. So we'll hear more about all these things from the various presenters this evening on the agenda, Mr. President.
Any questions for Mr. O'Connor?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the claims as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the claims. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you very much. Miscellaneous number 1, council to hear a report from Noblesville Main Street. Ms. Baker. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. thank you, President Smith, City Council members, and Mayor Jensen, for giving Noblesville Main Street the opportunity to present to you today. Year over year, the City of Noblesville, shows its incredible support of our organization. It is my privilege to stand before you today, not only to share with you all that we've accomplished this year, but to simply say thank you. I am Kate Baker, the Executive Director of Noblesville Main Street. I've been in my role for 2 years now, and for me, the fun has only just begun. I want to begin by acknowledging the absolutely incredible Board of Directors Noblesville Main Street has this year. We have 19 seats on our board consisting of 15 voting members and 4 ex officio seats. Our ex officio seats serve as community connectors from the City of Noblesville, Noblesville Preservation Alliance, Serve Noblesville, and 1 to-be-filled seat belonging to Hamilton County Tourism. Several of our board members are here in support this evening. I'd like to acknowledge our tremendous executive committee, President Katie Nernberger, Vice President Anita Rogers, Secretary Amelia Seaborn, Treasurer Chris Tyson, and past President Jay Mundy. I say it every year, but our board of directors are asked to give countless hours. Actually, not countless. Thanks to our partnership with Main Street America, this year tracking hours has become a requirement. And so far this year, we are over 1,000 hours that our board has dedicated to Noblesville Main Street and the community it serves. I am filled with gratitude to these remarkable people who show their love for Noblesville through this great act of service. I would be remiss if I did not mention our hardworking, creative, and incredibly generous freelance employees. Maggie Williams is in her 2nd year of managing the farmers market for all 24 weeks. Maggie has built an unmatched experience through the coordination of 80 to 100 weekly vendors, health and wellness guests, nonprofit guests, live music, and special themed days such as Kids Days, where we see more than 30 kid entrepreneurs each time. Her dedication to Noblesville, Noblesville Main Street, and the farmers market is remarkable, and we are incredibly grateful for her service. Lindsay McVeigh, aside from being one of our downtown business owners and one of the creators of one of Noblesville's largest events, the Indiana Peony Festival, Lindsay serves as our marketing manager, spearheading our social media pages, event signage, and overall brand promotion. She works tirelessly not only for our organization, but for our entire community. It is a privilege to have her on our team. Noblesville Main Street has modeled its structure after the guidance of Main Street America, of which we are an accredited member. We are also accredited through Indiana Main Street, which falls under the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, better known as OCRA. Last year, I explained to you how Main Street America teaches the 4-point approach in order to fulfill its mission of the revitalization of historic communities. Those 4 points are economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. Our board of directors dive into these 4 points through our committees of the same name. The Economic Vitality Committee, led by Scott Smith, examines business support of more than 170 businesses within the Main Street District. The Promotion Committee, led by Brett Richardson, focuses on engagement through the creation and execution of our more than 20 events throughout the year. The Organization Committee, led by Lauren Stafford, assesses the financial goals, fundraising needs, and volunteer efforts needed for our organization. And lastly, our Design Committee, led by Jeff Davis, is a new committee for us, but the city's Downtown District Committee has graciously opened its door to join forces with us in hopes of an effective collaboration to carry out our committee's goals to answer the question, what physically defines our historic district? The shift we made from last year to align our committees with the Main Street America 4-point approach has had a positive impact on our organization's overall achievements. We look forward to continuing to refine our processes as we sail into 2024. In March of this year, I was elated to get a scholarship to attend the Main Street Now conference, which was held in my old college stomping grounds of Boston, Massachusetts. Admittedly, I had no idea what to expect being the first time I would be attending this conference. I was blown away. For 3 days, I was immersed in all things Main Street. I was with more than 2,000 Main Street districts across the United States, sharing ideas, making lifelong connections, and more importantly, representing the community I love on a national scale. I walked away understanding just what we are a part of. We are a part of something bigger. We are a part of a very special movement that started back in 1980. The group of people you see in that first photo, they're just a small group of preservationists who wanted to see history honored. They wanted to save the historic districts from disappearing, and they wanted them to thrive. Did you hear me say that there were more than 2,000 districts at this conference? That's the power of a good idea. In just over 40 years, historic districts like Noblesville are growing, their history preserved, and their communities are not only saved, but they are truly thriving. We look forward to sharing with you next year our experience at the NOW Conference, which will be held in Birmingham, Alabama, this coming May. Every year, I tell you that my favorite word is collaboration. I hope that you, as one of our tremendous community partners, can see now, 2 years in, just how serious I am about that word. It all started with the creation of the Downtown Collaborative Committee. This brought together 5 entities that are consistently present in our historic downtown and provides a space for us to sit together each month and compare calendars, potential challenges, and share our successes. Aaron Head with the City of Noblesville, Brandon Bennett with Noblesville Parks and Rec, Ailey McGill with Nickel Plate Arts, Bob Dubois from the Noblesville Chamber of Commerce, and myself have created an incredible support system and idea-generating meeting that aids in the flow of the activities in downtown Noblesville. For the second year, Noblesville Main Street teamed up with the Boys and Girls Club, Noblesville Parks and Rec, and the Noblesville Schools Education Foundation to bring to life Noblesville Race Weekend, a coming together of 3 beloved events: bed race, duck race, and the Amazing Miller Scavenger Hunt. Taking place the weekend after the Indy 500, we have found this to create great enthusiasm for our hometown races, inviting all to head downtown for a weekend of family fun. Also in its second year, we brought together 2 events creating a weekend-long promotion of Noblesville Main Street's upstairs downtown building tour and the Noblesville Preservation Alliance's historic home tour. Once again, the power of collaboration showed an increased attendance for both events, validating the collaborative marketing efforts. For Noblesville Main Street, with our emphasis on preservation, it is an absolute honor to partner with our fellow nonprofit. For the third year, we supported Noble Coffee and Tea in their presentation of Salsa on the Square. Again, we saw increased attendance and a true celebration of culture. 2 women from Venezuela pulled me aside to thank me as a representative of Noblesville for highlighting and celebrating the Latin culture in such a fun, beautiful, and authentic way. New residents to Noblesville who relocated from Chicago paid a full-priced ticket near the conclusion of the event because they were touched by the community's ability to be inclusive of all cultures from within our city. It is an incredibly important event on so many levels, and it is wonderful to be a part of it. We are grateful to Noble Coffee and Tea for allowing us to support something so very special. We formed 2 new collaborations this year. In July, we partnered with Shine Yoga and Wellness to bring sunshine on the square. Thanks to the efforts of Tara Bushong, we hosted a free yoga event and a masterclass led by renowned yoga instructor and author Tara Stiles. We invited other health and wellness vendors onto the square for a celebration of movement and positivity. We also were proud to partner with the Bridge of Flowers to host for the first time on Logan Bridge a beautiful gala with drinks, dinner, and live music. For Noblesville Main Street, the Bridge of Flowers serves as a serene and eye-catching walkway of connectivity from our historic downtown into Federal Hill Commons. It was our pleasure to welcome the Bridge of Flowers into the Noblesville Main Street District and show our support for all it brings to the heart of our historic downtown. Collaboration is important. It creates synergy. It creates enthusiasm. It creates buy-in, and above all, it builds a sense of belonging. To me, that is the underlying mission of Noblesville Main Street, to ensure that Noblesville is a place for everyone to belong. I am incredibly proud of the partnership Noblesville Main Street shares with the city of Noblesville. Without the support from the city, it would be nearly impossible for Noblesville Main Street to exist. You've shown your belief in us by increased funding in 2022 and then another significant increase for 2023. We were provided $31,000 in financial support and nearly $70,000 in in-kind support. We cannot say thank you enough for the use of our beautiful office space on Connor Street, the use of Federal Hill Commons for our 24 weeks of the Noblesville Main Street Farmers Market, and the invaluable help and countless hours provided by our police, fire, and street departments. You graciously appointed Patty Johnson, Street Department Commissioner, to serve on our Board of Directors, and I am so incredibly grateful for her time, her expertise, and her personal volunteer hours. Your funding allows us to continue growing, being a support to our downtown businesses, and the ability to teach more and more people within and beyond our Noblesville community. In my work over the past 2 years with our local businesses, I have come to understand that as small business owners, merchants must be cautious with their spending and be strategic with their affiliations. When I launched the Noblesville Main Street Merchant Support Program, I was asking for financial support from our local businesses, but I was also asking for buy-in through trust and partnership. I wanted to ensure our downtown merchants knew that they were getting something meaningful in return. In fact, by being a merchant supporter, their annual fee covers their buy-in to the majority of our programming, offers them free space at the farmers market, lists them on our website's homepage, and tags them in every First Friday post on social media. In the first year, I had 15 businesses trust me through their commitment to this program. I knew Noblesville Main Street had to prove ourselves and the validity of this type of buy-in. This year, I am pleased to report that we have 24 businesses that are Noblesville Main Street merchant supporters. It is my hope that I will continue to earn their trust as we work to highlight their businesses and continue the engagement within downtown Noblesville. Trust isn't handed out for free. And it's important to note that the city's support of Noblesville Main Street through your increased funding and your generous promotion through things such as the Mayor's Friday 5 help communicate our impact and build the belief that we are truly an organization created to support our local businesses. You started that belief, and Noblesville Main Street is eternally grateful for the support from the city of Noblesville. We wanted to give you a look of the breakdown of our expenses and revenue so far in 2023. You'll see that our largest expense went to the coverage of salaries and general expenses. Our biggest moneymaker continues to be the farmers market. We are steadily gaining our footing through donations and sponsorships, which again, it is with the city's support that we are able to leverage those asks with the foundation of your funding. We were pleased to have, for the first time, a presenting sponsor of the farmers market. In addition to the city's generous funding, we were also the recipient of a $15,000 grant from the Hamilton County Community Foundation. Hamilton County Tourism also provided funding through a grant in support of our program, Magic of the Square. We are looking forward to more partnerships through sponsorships as we increase our plans to hire more staff members and have the capacity to take on more to serve our growing community. I wanted to take a moment to highlight Duke Energy, who stepped up to be, as I previously mentioned, our first ever presenting sponsor of the Noblesville Main Street Farmers Market. This significant sponsorship gave us the ability to welcome more nonprofit organizations to be showcased at our weekly market at no cost to them. We are grateful to our friends at Duke Energy for their generosity and support of our community. There's nothing better than steady growth. You'll see that our farmers market numbers this year compared to 2022 are about $20,000 higher. Had we not had our presenting sponsor, we'd have fairly consistent numbers from last year. For me, that's a great thing. Last year, we increased vendor fees significantly. This year, we were able to offer a small discount to our returning seasonal vendors, which was highly appreciated. Despite the construction of the Federal Hill Apartments, attendance from both vendors and consumers has been steady. We are grateful for all the support from the city, as well as Old Town Construction, as we navigate, as a team, this largely attended weekly event. This year, we did a media buy with Indy Now. Each month, myself and a board member travel to the Fox 59 studios to film a segment about our upcoming event. We have heard many people at our events mention the appearances, and often that it's how they heard about the event. It is because of this recurring appearance that we are beginning to see more visitors at our programs from outside of Noblesville. Additionally, we have been proud to share this spotlight with our event partners, with memorable appearances with Abigail Stutzman from the Boys and Girls Club for Noblesville Race Weekend, Amanda Rausch from the Noblesville Preservation Alliance for Upstairs Downtown and the Historic Home Tour, and even our own Wilhelmina Wonka for our Chocolate Trail. I'm just kidding, that's Katie Nurnberger dressed up. We were thrilled to be entrusted with the official celebration of Noblesville's bicentennial at our annual event, Street Dance. This year, we partnered with the city's Bicentennial Committee, led by Megan Wiles and Brett Richardson, as well as the Hamilton County Bicentennial Committee, led by Jessica Lehman, to create an experience that honored 200 years of Noblesville. Understanding that the Historical Society had planned an incredible historic interpreters to speak, NMS knew that we had to help highlight these efforts. We extended this year's street dance to be from 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. so the interpreters could have the stage to perform their speeches. It was a very special event. Nickel Plate Arts also got involved and hosted a mural commissioned by artist Beth Forst that invited attendees of all ages to be a part of history and add their personal touch to the mural. We extended the vendor footprint as we invited our farmers market vendors to participate. This was not an easy lift. Those who participated in both the farmers market and street dance gave Noblesville their full day, most starting around 4 a.m. and staying with us until 11 p.m. As the day turned to night, the party just got bigger. Aaron Head emceed the evening of music and fun. We believe that we saw about 9,000 attendees throughout the day, and by far had the most amount of people dancing to the very last music note than in previous years. The rebuild from the pandemic is very real, but it finally felt almost back to normal. It was a joy to collaborate and create something together that truly honored our hometown. This has sounded like a recap of a very full year, but we aren't done yet. The Farmers Market has 3 more weeks, not to mention the holiday market on December 2nd. 3 more First Fridays include Fall Fest, Holiday Open House, and Deck the Downtown. 1 more, Music and All That Jazz, on October 14th. Small Business Saturday will bring all sorts of festivities on November 25th. And get ready for the Noblesville Main Street Holiday Gala on December 7th. The planning has already begun. As I've said many times before, without partnerships, Noblesville Main Street just doesn't exist. Along with the generous support from the City of Noblesville, we have been fortunate to gain support from a few incredible businesses, such as Duke Energy, Hometown Window and Door Company, Community First Bank of Indiana, Gordon Insurance Partners, the Gordon Family of Companies, Indy Photo Fund, Riverview Health, Crone and Associates, the Lacey Arts Building, Adler Attorneys, Potee Family Dentistry, Alexander's on the Square, Moonshot Games, Smith Legal, Kurt Meyer Real Estate, and the Hamilton County Business Magazine. Our list of sponsors continues to grow, and that means a lot to the future of Noblesville Main Street. Be on the lookout because we are finally ready to launch our individual donor program, Friends of Noblesville Main Street. It's coming soon. More to come on this. I cannot say thank you enough for your support and your time today. This organization and this city has my whole heart. I'm so very proud of its past, and I believe in the power of its future. This is the first place that I ever called home. I left, I learned, but I returned. And it still and will forever be my home. It is my hope that all who come to Noblesville, whether they live here or not, are filled with that sensation of belonging. Everyone needs a home, and we are the community that provides just that. It's the work that Noblesville Main Street aims to do, create a place for all to call home. Thank you.
With that, any questions for Ms. Baker while she's up there?
No, just a comment. Kate, you and your team, the board, everybody's done a fantastic job. I think the investment we make as a city is well worth it. The participation from the citizens, the farmers market, I mean, I think it speaks for itself. So keep doing what you're doing, and I think it'll just continue to pay dividends for everybody.
That's the hope. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Anything
Thank you.
else? Thank you
Thanks,
for being here.
everyone.
Moving on to new ordinances for discussion. The council to consider ordinance number 24-09-23, an ordinance establishing the 2024 budget.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Mr. Jensen.
Good evening, Mr.
Good
President.
evening.
Also the birthday boy. Happy birthday.
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
That's right. You also spent Valentine's Day with this council as well this year.
And our anniversary.
And your anniversary,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
just knocking out of the park this year.
You're not going to be able to afford that, yeah.
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in, as people say, my gift of gab, but next time I would like to go in front of Kate Baker, please. So, I'll just comment quickly on Kate and her team. I get to work with some pretty incredible people every day, not only in City Hall, but outside of City Hall as well, and I use the term lion chasers quite a bit, and Kate Baker is the quintessential lion chaser. And her and her organization have a huge impact on this community, and I can say that we have not made their job easy at times with some of our progress throughout downtown, but they have always been gracious partners and willing participants to see the bright side and make it as great as it can be. So Kate, to you and your board, thank you for all that you do. I am here tonight to talk a little bit about the budget and present for the fourth time as mayor of Noblesville the budget for 2024. But before I do that, I would like to comment on something that happened this morning that actually has budgetary impacts for our city. You may recall 4 years ago when we were all running for office, one of my biggest pledges was to start and work to substantially finish a major infrastructure project in downtown Noblesville called Pleasant Street. And if you haven't heard of it, I have nothing left for you. But if you need more information, reimaginepleasantst.com is where you can go for that. And we had no idea what was around the corner for our city, and we didn't know what was happening in our nation with COVID-19. And so a year ago, we went to bid on a first phase of that. And to be perfectly frank, the nervous energy coming from Ali Krupski and the engineering department based on the construction industry's pricing was a real threat to this project. And you may recall a year ago, because of their due diligence, we were able to bid that below engineer's estimate, which was really unheard of at the time. Well, this morning, that whole scenario recreated itself in this very room for phases 2 and 3, which will complete the project for Pleasant Street. And I can tell you there is a board in the engineering department with guesses on dollars of where it was going to be and how bad it could be this morning. And I can tell you that the low bids for phases 2 and 3 combined to come in, once again, under the engineer's estimate. And I just think that speaks incredibly to not only our engineering team, to Ali Krupski, to Jim Hellman, to Andrew Rodewald, but to the consultants that we've had. I mean, the fine-tooth combing and piecing together those bid packets is what made this process as smooth as can be. So I just want to give them a kudos. And again, we were really waiting on those final numbers before we introduced this budget tonight, because there would be impact, obviously, on that as we move forward. So with that long-winded introduction, I am proud to introduce the 2024 budget. I want to start by thanking each and every one of you. I am incredibly proud of the work that we do collaboratively in this process. We, for the public, we start very early on in the summer months, maybe even in the springtime. You all meet with council liaisons and different staff members to talk about budget requests. We go through a very thorough vetting process all summer long with many public hearings. We have great spirited debates and conversations, and I think that's what led us to the collaborative effort that we have here tonight. So this budget I'm incredibly proud of. I think it focuses, it's a great focus on investment in the city of Noblesville. We are a rapidly growing community, and rapidly growing communities have rapidly growing needs. This budget invests wisely in infrastructure costs. It has a record investment in public safety dollars. This budget represents 50.1% of this budget goes to public safety in the city of Noblesville. And I think that speaks again to our commitment as a community, as a council, as administration, to making sure that we are staffed and trained to keep our community safe going forward, because that's the number one job that we do when we wake up every single morning. So this budget prioritizes public safety, road and infrastructure improvements, economic and tourism development, preserving and enhancing our historic downtown, and quality of life for our residents. It, as was alluded to earlier by Mr. O'Connor, keeps our property tax rate at $1.10 of the city's assessed value, which this is the same amount that we have held now for 5 years. So we've been able to hold that tax rate going forward to make sure that we're protecting the taxpayer. It includes $11.1 million in major road improvements. As I mentioned earlier, 50.1% to public safety budgets. 8 new police officers will be sworn in to the Noblesville Police Department. A new ambulance to support demands and quicker response times in our growing community. Funds site preparation and design for a new police station to replace the outdated facility that has been in use since 1992. You'll be hearing more about that in the coming months. Expands the Noble Act program, which I know we're all incredibly proud of, including an in-house licensed clinical social worker to work alongside police and fire personnel who are assisting individuals with mental health, substance abuse, and other needs. Continues investment in the reimagined Pleasant Street project, as mentioned earlier, and also in Innovation Mile, which is the master planned 600-acre site on the business district near I-69 and exit 210, which will be a major economic anchor for us on the east side of Noblesville. That's a very high level, a summary of it. I'm going to turn it over to a guy who will take it much deeper, in Jeff Spalding, but I want to thank him and the entire team in the Office of Finance and Accounting for all that they've done. I want to thank Matt Light, Deputy Mayor of the City of Noblesville, who's always hearing from me and on my comments going forward, and he makes them happen, and I appreciate all that he does. And also thanks to Holly Ramone. She is a fierce advocate for the personnel who work in the city of Noblesville. And I think sometimes that gets lost on us, that nearly 500 individuals come to work every single day to continue to move the city of Noblesville forward, and Holly Ramone is a fierce advocate on behalf of them. So with that, I'll turn it over to the CFO, Jeff Spalding, but I thank you for your time, and I really thank you for the work that you've put in to date. Jeff?
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. And I will return some of the...
Sorry, hold on. Do we need to introduce this? Do we introduce it? Okay, sorry. Missed that.
Before I go
Just wanted to
into
make sure I wasn't in trouble. Yes.
Before I go into my pitch here, I will return some of the nice comments and appreciation. As the mayor said, it's a collaborative effort, and there's a lot of work that goes on, not only in the Office of Finance and Accounting, but across city departments. And we're working collectively with the directors that all of you interact with on a regular basis, and it's a pretty significant and substantial team effort that they play a big role in as well. And also, I will say, the mayor's office is very active with both the vision and guidance from the mayor, and then the constant interaction with the deputy mayor around the overall guidelines for the budget. And so that helps frame all of this stuff up well for you. Again, Jeff Spalding, CFO. I'm going to start with probably the most boring part, and it's pretty hard to pick which is the most boring part, but the most boring part of this presentation, which is really the heart and guts of the budget, which is this actual budget ordinance that you do have in your packet that looks like this, and there's a cover letter on top of it. And each year I give this little preamble, and this year we've added the cover letter to memorialize that, and it's something you can reference back to. But it's just to clarify for you and the public some of the nuances around the budget ordinance versus the budget presentation that you will see momentarily. And as we talk, as I explained in the past and is described in this memo, there are a number of complex legal requirements around budgeting in Indiana state law. I lay out what those requirements are in this memo, and then I explain how those requirements work together to produce something that at the end of the day is an official budget ordinance, but because of the way we strive to manage the city finances, the actual budget that we constrain ourselves to here in the city of Noblesville is actually, more streamlined and tighter than what is represented in this ordinance. And that can cause some confusion, but I like to make that clear, each year as we go through this process. For example, this budget ordinance reflects a total tax rate of $1.22, but the actual total tax rate that we will constrain ourselves to is $1.10. And when we get to final adoption of the budget, there'll be more on that. But I just wanted to take a moment, draw your attention to this. This is the actual official legal document that is being introduced and will be addressed, but the budget that you'll hear presented is how the city will manage its finances over the next year. So with that, I will introduce my Deputy Finance Officer, Ian Zelgowski, and he'll take you through the 2024 introduced budget.
All right, good evening. Ian Zelgowski, Deputy Financial Officer for the City of Noblesville. I'm happy to be presenting to you tonight the 2024 introduced budget. And this presentation is really broken down into two parts. So the first part we're going to talk about is the revenues of the city and the revenue growth that we're experiencing. And then we're going to discuss expenses and, of course, the expense growth that comes along with that. And to begin, we'll talk about the budget in perspective. So these next two slides are really, if you had 30 seconds to talk about what's the budget for 2024 look like, these would be the key points, the highlights that you'd want to look at. And of course, much like the rest of the presentation, we're starting with the revenue first before expenses. And revenues have really skyrocketed for Noblesville. And I want to preface that and say that those revenue growths are not because we have increased any tax rates. We're not trying to go out and collect additional money from our tax base. That's really coming from two different distinct forces. The first one is going to be just inflationary forces. So that is causing an upward pressure on property values. It's causing incomes to go up as people request more money from their employers. And then a large part of it, in fact, most of it is coming from just the organic growth of the city. So, the good news is we are attracting new communities and new businesses, and people want to live here, people want to work here, and as that tax base grows, revenue grows along with it. And that's important because, as the mayor had mentioned, we need that additional revenue to support public safety, to support our roads and streets, to make sure that those are maintained, to support our parks as demand goes up for those areas as well. So the revenue really breaks down into three important indicators. The first one is going to be the net assessed value growth, and so that is the overall value of the city of Noblesville, and the certified net assessed value had grown 10.25%, will grow for 2024. That equates to about $475 million roughly. Average net assessed value growth has been 10.8% from 2020 to 2023. It goes to 10.7 when you include 2024. Thanks to our $1.10 tax rate, we are able to capitalize on that growth. So our certified levy is coming in at 10.25% as well. So that is $5.2 million higher for 2024. And of course, because we are subject to the circuit breaker here in Indiana, our net collections for property taxes are going to come in at about $4.2 million in 2024, higher than 2023. And then local income tax has grown 16.5% year over year, equates to about $5.5 million additional revenue being collected in 2024. Now, because we are growing, expenses are going to be growing as well, and as the mayor had said, we're focused on investment back into the city in 2024. So budget growth for all funds is equating out to $15.4 million. That's about a 15.3% growth in the budget. When you exclude one-time spending, it's coming out to $7.9 million or 7.9% growth in all funds. When you focus on just the funds that are receiving property tax and income tax, growth is only 7.5% when you exclude one-time spending. And then because it's nearly impossible to spend 100% of the budget in any given year, we're expecting about $3.5 million of appropriations to revert. So that would be $3.5 million to go unspent by the end of 2024. As we had previously discussed, inflation effects are affecting this budget as well. So we have a significant uptick in inflation since middle of 2022 that has flowed through to impact both the city's expenses and the revenue. If we adjust for inflation, our real spending growth for the city is only about 4%. So definitely very happy to be right around that number for real growth. And we continue to have strong reserve balances, and we continue to do our strategic spend down program. So the balances in our funds really serve the purpose of just, making sure that we have enough money in there should we have an economic downturn, what have you. But there is excess reserves in those accounts, and we are not a bank. We're not designed to just hold people's tax money. We want to make sure that we are using that money and investing it back into the community wisely. So for a couple years now, we've done what we've called the strategic spend down. For 2024, we targeted a $7.5 million strategic spend down of the city reserves. And if we exclude one-time spending, our revenues are projected to exceed our expenses by $7.5 million. Coming up to the budget overview, really the most important numbers on this page to look at. Across all budgeted funds, the total amount of the budget for the city in 2024 is $116.2 million. That is, again, the growth of $15.4 million from the 2024 base amount. If you were looking at the funds that operate the city, so we would exclude any debt service payments and any pension obligations with that number, we're looking at $97.3 million. And if you're looking at just the funds that receive a share of the property tax and local income tax, the budget for the city is $89.9 million, just shy of $90 million. Fund balance overview. This is really just a map that is indicating kind of the perspective of where we expect to start 2024 and where we would expect to end 2024 across the different fund segments. Most important number on this page is probably that projected surplus deficit under the total max levy and lit funds. You'll see that it's just negative, barely negative at $25,682. So that's where we're getting that, that number where if you exclude the one-time spending, so basically you add the one-time spending back to this number, we are actually underspending our revenue by about $7.5 million. Moving on, we'll discuss the budgeted revenue. We'll start with the 2024 tax rates. This remains unchanged from 2023. We haven't adjusted any tax rates, nor do we have any means to. Again, the items on this page that we really have a direct impact or direct control over would be items 1, 3, and 4 here. So the property tax, the food and beverage tax, and the city surtax and wheel tax, those are amounts that we can have some direct involvement in setting. The local income tax, we do have a say in what that tax rate is, but that's really set by the county, and then we receive a share of that local income tax that is collected. But again, none of these numbers have changed since 2023, so our tax rates are not being increased whatsoever. We look at a breakdown of the 2024 revenues by source. We've got two views here. The first one is going to be all revenues, so we're expecting $113.5 million to be collected in 2024. And then if we look at the local taxes only that are going to be collected, we're looking at $95 million roughly. Most of that coming again, of course, by property tax and local income tax, with a share of other miscellaneous taxes they're contributing as well. And then we look at a different view, the revenues by fund type. For budgeted funds only, again, $113.5 million here, and the different funds that those are going towards as far as revenues, you'll see max levy and lit funds are receiving the lion's share of those revenues, with other operational pension obligations and debt service funds receiving about a quarter of that amount. And then if you look at the property taxes only, the max levy and lit funds receive about 64% of those, 4.5% going to restricted capital, what we call the CCD fund, and 32% of that is going to debt service, paying down any debt that the city might have. If we look at revenue growth by type across all sources, you'll see that our revenue growth year over year is about $17.5 million. So that's where that revenue is skyrocketing. And most of that is coming from local taxes, with a non-insignificant portion coming from miscellaneous revenues. A big portion of that is a new initiative that the Office of Finance and Accounting has undertaken over the past year and a half roughly, where we started to invest the city's idle dollars and to start to capitalize on the higher interest rates that we could actually get out in the market these days. So that is the success of that program as well, going towards those miscellaneous revenues to help kind of bolster that revenue growth that we're experiencing. And then if we break it down into the local taxes only, where is that growth coming from? We do have some growth coming from the property tax, about $6.2 million coming from property tax. We have about $9 million coming from local income tax, and then some share of growth coming from the other miscellaneous taxes there, for an overall revenue growth of $15.2 million. Moving on to the budgeted expenditures. As mentioned previously, across all funds, the 2024 city budget for Noblesville is $116.2 million. This is broken down into what types of funds those expenses are budgeted to. So again, the max levy and lit funds, most of those are going to be key operational funds. We do have some expenses in the other operational funds. Those are going to be things like our park program fund. Pension obligations is just under 1% share of that, and then debt service payments coming in at 15.6% of that. If we break it down by expense category, of course, our largest category in the city is going to be the 100 series. That's going to be our workforce expenses, so those salaries and benefits. And then if you break it down further, our 200 series is about 3.2%. 200 series is going to be supply items for the city, so there's going to be staples, pens, paper, what have you. 300 series is going to be services and other charges. Those are going to come down to things like software licenses, any professional consultation that different departments might use. Also in the 300 series are debt service payments, so those payments that are being done towards bonds, leases, etc. And then we have the capital outlay, the 400 series, and those are going to be more concrete expenditures for supporting and maintaining and investing in city capital. If we look at the operational funds only, the 100 series share of that grows to 63%, 300 series, 400 series, and 200 series making up about a third on that breakdown. And for operational funds only, as mentioned previously, the total amount budgeted towards those is $97.3 million. If we look at the budget growth over base. Base budget is a really interesting methodology that we employ here in the city that basically says, what do we need to continue to run the city year after year? And then the growth on top of that is kind of what we focus on when developing the budget each year. And so that growth over base is that 15.4 million. Again, 7.5 million of that is coming from one-time expenditures. 7.9 million of that is going to be ongoing spending, and we'll break that down into where exactly those two numbers are headed, splitting up the 7.5 and 7.9 million. If we look at budget increases by fund type, much like we did with the revenue, are those $15.4 million budget increases going towards? Again, lion's share of those increases are going to be in the max levy and lit funds. Other operational funds stays relatively stable, growing at just about 0.9 million. Pension obligations haven't grown much, about $50,000 there. Debt service actually has not grown year over year, as far as for budget increases. Breaking down that $15.4 million, what types of expenses is that going towards? And this slide actually tells a really interesting story. Of that $15.4 million, a lot of people would assume that a lot of that is going towards supporting our workforce, that Series 100. But in fact, only about a third of that is going towards that Series 100. And really, that is a testament to a guideline that the mayor's office put out requesting that the city departments focus on keeping their 200, 300, and 400 series growth at 4% or under 4%. And that has really allowed us to use a lot more dollars, especially of that $7.5 million one-time spending for the strategic spend down, to reinvest back into the city. And that's kind of what you're seeing here with the 300 series and 400 series taking up about 2/3 of that $15.4 million growth. That is really signaling the increased focus on reinvesting in the city of Noblesville. If we break down that $15.4 million by which departments are receiving most of that $15.4 million expenditure growth, fire, police are receiving most of it, so that's the support towards our public safety. Of course, increased demand in the street department has placed about $3.4 million of that going towards street department support. Parks is receiving a good share, and then planning and economic development is receiving $2.4 million, with the remaining departments kind of divvying up what remains of that $15.4. Breaking down the $7.9 million of ongoing spending, $3 million of that is going to be for civilian COLA increases, and then some share of that $3 million will be going towards sworn public safety officers. The final amount of that is yet to be determined in the union mean confer negotiations, but the total amount of the civilian and sworn COLA increases is not to exceed the $3 million. $2 million is going towards 20 new full-time positions, including 2 fire and 10 police. $1.7 million is increase in costs of software licenses, vehicle leases, contractual services. So again, because of inflationary pressures, we're not immune to that, so those are just going to be inflationary cost increases with a lot of the software and different services that the city employs. Economic Development Department requested $1 million ongoing support for Innovation Mile and other economic development projects, so that'll be a recurring expense that'll help them to support their strategic initiatives in their department. And then supply cost increases coming in at just around $200,000, and that is items related to fuel, utility costs, and other miscellaneous supply costs. Breaking down that $7.5 million, where is that one-time spending going? $3.6 million of it is going towards major road improvement projects. $1 million going towards facility improvements for City Hall and other city-owned buildings. $1.3 million going to public safety, one-time supplies and facility improvements. So as we support those public safety needs and increase the public safety workforce, there are some one-time costs associated with that. $1 million going towards economic development, one-time costs for major projects. This is kind of the opposite side of the coin from that $1 million that our Economic Development Department requested for ongoing spending to support their strategic initiatives. This is $1 million of one-time spending planned to go towards those same strategic initiatives. And then other miscellaneous departmental one-time costs coming in at about $600,000, totaling up that $7.5 million of one-time spending. If we look at that $116.2 million and we want to see what departments is that going towards supporting, and again, this is all Civil City funds, so this includes operational funds, debt service payments, and pension obligations. You'll see that a large share of that is going towards fire and police, that public safety sector that the mayor had spoken about. Good chunk of it going towards supporting our street. Another good chunk going towards our parks, and then the rest being divvied up amongst the remaining departments. And going back to the mayor's comment about us spending about 51% of the budget supporting public safety, that's really shown by this slide. So if you look at the operational funds only, those funds that, if you wanted to see what does it take to run the city day by day, you'd look at these funds specifically, you'll see that the 51% supporting public safety is represented here. And then we look at the debt service payments. So these are the payments going towards specifically bonds that the city has, those bonds that are supported by property tax debt levies. It's coming in at $18.1 million. Most of that, 56% of it going towards supporting street programs, 8% going towards maintenance. Back to investment in public safety, we're looking at about 10% going to fire and police, and the remainder going to the various departments there in the top left. Next, we're going to speak about capital funding. So capital funding are the monies that go towards projects that are specifically spelled out in our capital improvement plan. These are going to be projects that are generally higher dollar amount, more complicated, might span multiple years. And we set aside a certain amount of dollars to go towards those type of projects. For 2024, total capital funding is coming in at just under $18.5 million. And if we want to break down of kind of what projects that's going towards supporting, you'll see that here we have $15.7 million of that already earmarked for various projects across the city. You'll notice that there are quite a few big ticket projects on here, Pleasant Street Phase 2, Phase 3, as well as various other projects that the city has planned to support in 2024. Finally, we'll discuss other notable items within the budget. The city has a health self-insurance fund, and the Civil City's share of that is 93%, the other 7% being supported by our utility department. In the 2024 budget, that's $10.5 million. And that goes towards supporting the city's premiums for medical, dental, vision, and Medicare supplement coverage. Current employees are about $8.7 million of that, and retired employees that we are supporting is $1.8 million. We have a property and casualty self-insurance fund. Contributions for 2024 is going to be $1.2 million. That includes an ongoing increase of $135,000 per year to further bolster that fund. We have two subsidies, the park program subsidy of $200,000. That's money set aside to support the park program fund, which specifically supports our golf and recreation departments. So should those departments not be able to capture enough revenue in any given year to cover their expenses, the 108 Park Fund is able to earmark up to $200,000 to help support those funds, those departments. And then we have the parking subsidy coming from the police department, $300,000, and that is to support the parking meter fund, should it not be able to generate enough revenue to fully support itself. And then we have contingency appropriations, so those are monies set aside to allow the city to be more agile and respond more quickly to those unseen or unknown costs at the time of budget adoption. That is equaling out to $960,000, and that excludes $150,000 for personal services contingency for any mid-year pay adjustments if necessary. And with that, I thank you for your time this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I know that was a quick and dirty summary of the 2024 budget, but I'm fully prepared to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Zilgowski?
Just really a comment, Mr. President. I mean, this budget's grown materially over the 15, 16 years I've been engaged in the process, but it's been very well done. There's always room for improvement, but this is light years better than what we started with a number of years ago. So credit to you and Jeff and the rest of the OFA team. You look at these percentage increases, and you hit on it earlier, but inflation has really had a lot to do with this, not only from an expense standpoint, but the revenue side as well. And I think your 4% number is pretty close from a real increase, because inflation peaked in '22 at 9.1 and 5.4, depends on what index you look at, but that doesn't include food and energy, so our constituents are feeling that as well, and oil's headed back to $100 a barrel, it would appear. So those costs will continue to filter back in, so I think the contingency is well played, because fuel costs are going to continue to increase. So this is great, and the city's going the right direction, but you just have, I think as a group, we just need to be vigilant and make sure that we're watching what's happening out in the marketplace. And the interest income's great, but guess what? When we go float the bonds for Pleasant Street, they're going to be more expensive. So, you know, one kind of washes the other a little bit, but overall, this is all really good news. The city's on good financial footing, and I appreciate all the work you guys do and the rest of the council members, because I think everybody's focused on this, because this is our job.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this is
yeah.
what we do. So I think that we're in the right place, and it will just continue to improve, but nonetheless, we got to just make sure we've got our eyes wide open.
Yeah, I want to give additional kudos. I mean, the mayor has given really good guidance to the departments, both for the 2023 budget and the 2024 budget, and the departments have responded to that quite well. You know, of course, inflation is affecting everyone, and we ask the departments to try and manage that within their budgets to keep the budget growth as small as possible, and that's been a very challenging thing to request of them, and they've done it with aplomb and grace, and have really nailed it as far as trying to keep that budget growth manageable, so that we can continue to invest in big ticket items for the city.
Any other questions? If not, I will go ahead and open the public hearing for the 2024 operating budget.
Mr. President,
Ms. Wiles?
seeing no one come forward, I would move that we close the public hearing for the 2024 operating budget.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will have the second reading of the budget ordinance at our October 24th meeting. Council to consider ordinance number 25-09-23, a salary ordinance for appointed officials and employees of the city of Noblesville for 2024.
Move to introduce ordinance 250923.
Second.
Ms. Ramon?
Good evening, Holly Ramon, Human Resources Director. The salary ordinance before you represents the salary adjustments that we have discussed during our work sessions and budget workshops. The adjustments, we did have a few slight adjustments for a few positions. We received updated benchmarking from our compensation consultant. And then the salaries listed under the public safety sworn indicate the amounts that have been conditionally agreed upon during those meet and confer process. The police and fire meet and confer agreements will be presented to the Board of Works and Council in October. In bold font, you will notice are the new positions, and then under pages 6 and 7 indicate the revisions to a few of those sections. The majority of those changes are based on the, again, agreed changes to the meet and confer process and agreements. And then the last thing to mention is there were a few positions that were removed from the salary ordinance just due to them being outdated. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Ms. Ramon? We'll see you at the end of October.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council to consider ordinance number 27-09-23, an ordinance authorizing,
26.
I did skip 20s.
26.
Yes. Council to consider ordinance number 26-09-23, a salary ordinance for elected officials for the city of Noblesville for 2024. Mr. Ramon again.
Move to introduce ordinance 260923.
Second.
Thank you.
Again, these salary amounts were discussed during our budget process and work sessions. There is, in addition, a percentage amount increase that will be funded by the utilities. It was an increase of 5%. And then there was just a slight change in the wording. The word budgeted was added to the sentence, all annual budgeted salary amounts in this ordinance shall be rounded to the nearest dollar. That is just a word added for clarification for payroll purposes.
Any questions for Ms. Ramon? This will also be heard for a second reading at the end of October.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to the next one. Council to consider ordinance number 27-09-23, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and the sale of short-term bonds of the city, Series A, for the purpose of providing funds to be used for the costs of certain capital projects.
Move to introduce ordinance 270923.
Second.
Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller. And I will also, before I go specifically into this ordinance, I'll just frame up something for you and everyone. The next four, this and the next three items after it are all part of a package that work together, and it was referenced earlier. Some of that money was included, or the money that is being addressed here is included in the capital budget numbers that you just saw presented. But what this is the annual short-term capital improvement bond that we pursue each year, and this is the primary tool by which we do two things. We manage the city's tax rate with this tool by sizing this bond to specifically get to the $1.10 tax rate. And the other thing that it does is it provides additional money for capital improvements each year that help support all of the various great projects that the city is pursuing. And this first of these four items is authorizing. We're breaking this short-term capital projects bond the last 2 years and probably in the future into two parts. And this is the Series A part, which is authorizing that bond, and that is for general capital projects that are typically not road or transportation related. And I'll explain a little bit more when we get to the next ordinance that deals with those, why those are separate. But this is just authorizing the issuance of the Series A for the short-term capital bond for 2023, which is part of this budget.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding? Okay, we'll move on to the next ordinance. Council to consider ordinance number 28-09-23, an ordinance appropriating the proceeds of the capital project's short-term general obligation bonds of 2023 Series A and establishing a public hearing.
Move to introduce ordinance 280923.
Second.
Mr. Spalding.
So again, the bond that is being authorized with the ordinance that we just spoke about, again, in the arcane matrix of city municipal finance laws, this ordinance comes along and says the proceeds that we receive from that bond, the council is authorizing the city to spend by appropriating them. So that's what this ordinance does.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding?
Exhibit A is good to see.
Oh, yes, I guess I should mention that. Exhibit A does show what at the current moment in time, what the current planned use of those monies is.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Oh, you're welcome.
I would move to establish, oh, I can't do that. Someone else.
We need to have a public hearing.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
I would move that we establish a public hearing at the October 24th council meeting for
Second.
ordinance 28-09-23.
You seconded it? There's a motion and a second to establish a public hearing for ordinance number 28-09-23 at our October 24th meeting. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. I know. And we will see you for that one at our October 24th meeting. Council to consider ordinance number 29-09-23, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and the sale of short-term bonds of the city, Series B, for the purpose of providing funds to be used for the cost of certain road and street projects.
Move to introduce ordinance 29-09-23.
Second.
Mr. Spalding.
And again, essentially a repeat of ordinance 270923, but Series B, and the key words here were for road and street projects. And again, for clarification, the reason they're broken out into two different series, it's on a fairly technical level based on some state law changes that happened 2 or 3 years ago. The thresholds and criteria that are established for authorization of debt in the state of Indiana are slightly different for road and street projects than they are for other types of capital projects. And that's the reason we break those out into a separate set of bonds, so that when you're meeting those criteria, those are all aggregated together in that separate Series B bond.
Any questions? We'll move on to the next one, which is council consider ordinance number 30-09-23, an ordinance appropriating the proceeds of the capital projects short-term general obligation bonds of 2023, Series B, and establishing a public hearing.
Move to introduce ordinance 300923.
Second.
And again, the companion to the previous authorization of issuing the bond, this is authorizing the expenditure of the funds once we receive them. And there's an Exhibit A that shows what the planned expenditures are.
Mr. President.
Ms. Wiles?
I would move that we establish a public hearing for ordinance 30-09-23 at our October 24th meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to establish a public hearing for ordinance number 30-09-23 at our October 24th meeting. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9 now. Council to consider ordinance number 31-09-23, an ordinance approving an additional appropriation in the vehicle excise surtax / wheel tax fund to provide funding for the Pleasant Street project phases 2 and 3 and establishing a public hearing.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Mr. Spalding again.
All right, Mr. President, members of the council, this is an additional appropriation ordinance, but is mostly a kind of perfunctory technical thing that we're doing, and it fits with a plan that we have long had for the vehicle excise tax and wheel tax funds, and that is to once that new tax regime was set a couple of years back, the plan was to direct those dollars to fund the Pleasant Street project. And initially, what we were doing, until the bond financings are in place and we're making bond payments on the Pleasant Street project, we are using the proceeds that come in to basically more directly fund the project so we can reduce the amount that is needed to be borrowed. And the reason this is happening as a separate additional appropriation ordinance as opposed to an amount that was adopted in the 2023 budget is a year ago at this time, when we were putting together the 2023 budget, this was still part of the plan, but at that point in time, you don't know how much will be collected, and you don't know many other factors about that second Pleasant Street bond, which is scheduled to go to market in October, close in November, but now we're close enough to that. We know the monies that are available in the fund, and so this is requesting the appropriation, the ability, the legal authority to spend that money for the purpose it was originally intended, which is to reduce the size of the Pleasant Street Bond 2 that we're about to issue.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding on this one?
Mr. President, I would move to establish a public hearing for ordinance 310923 at our next regular meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to establish a public.
October 24th.
No, that's fine.
Oh,
for
you're
our
gonna
next-
run this,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's fine for our next
Sorry.
one.
Yeah, you
There's a
don't need to.
motion and a second to establish a public hearing for ordinance number 31-09-23 at our next regular meeting. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Council to consider ordinance number 32-09-23, an ordinance approving an additional appropriation in the debt service local income tax debt sinking fund to provide funding for the Levinson garage bond payment and establishing a public hearing.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Mr. Zelgowski.
Yes, thank you. That's a tongue twister, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the purpose of this ordinance, we have a bond that goes towards supporting the Levinson Garage project. Those bond payments come from the Levinson TIF, and they come from this debt sinking fund. When we adopted the 2023 budget, we were projecting that the Levinson TIF would generate somewhere around $450,000. That is actually coming up short this year. So we need to cover that gap with the income tax debt sinking fund. So we are asking for an additional appropriation, a one-time increase of $296,000 so that we can make that bond payment with those monies.
Any questions for Mr. Zelgowski?
When's that payment due?
It is actually, that's one of the unique ones. We actually we make sinking fund payments monthly,
Okay.
and then the debt service payments get semi-annual.
No reason to hurry, though.
Mr. President, I would move to establish a public hearing for ordinance 320923 at our next regular meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to establish a public hearing for ordinance 32-09-23 at our next regular meeting. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0. Council to consider ordinance number 33-09-23, an ordinance amending ordinance number 83-12-21 of the Common Council of the City of Noblesville concerning health benefits for certain retired and appointed employees / elected officials of the City of Noblesville.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Ms. Ramon?
Holly Ramon, Human Resources Director. The majority of these changes are simple housekeeping items. There was some outdated language concerning Medicare supplement enrollment and payment of insurance premiums. Language was also updated to provide information on eligibility and benefits. And the last thing were the job titles for appointed officials were removed, and a statement was added to reference the salary ordinance. If you remember, we have had now the appointed officials are all in one section, and then it goes into the civilian and sworn and part-time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you would like or have.
Any questions from Ms. Ramon? This one will also be heard the second reading at our October 24th meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Council to consider ordinance number 34-09-23, an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance number 62-12-95 and the Saxony Corporate Campus Ordinance number corporate campus ordinance number 03-02-20, and all amendments thereto, a part of the comprehensive master plan for the city of Noblesville, Hamilton County, Indiana.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Ms. Yelton.
Joyce Ann Yelton, Development Services Director, Manager in the Planning Department. This is for the Chick-fil-A that is actually located in the Saxony corporate campus. It is at the intersection of Campus Parkway, Bergen Boulevard, and Tegler. Immediately to the north of this is the Shell station, and we have the Crew Car Wash immediately to the east. Chick-fil-A has come back with another proposal to amend their existing development plan to include an 80 square foot addition to allow for a dry storage area for the restaurant. They also will be installing additional pervious pavers, which is in this area here, removing pavement and putting in pervious pavers. The building addition is back here in the northeast corner of the building. It is adjacent to the trash receptacle enclosure. They are eliminating some mature landscaping in that particular area, but have stated that they will plant additional landscaping elsewhere. The public hearing was held at the Plan Commission meeting. There were no individuals in attendance that either spoke for or against the project. The Plan Commission did forward it to the council with an 8-0 recommendation for adoption. And staff is asking that this item be voted on this evening as opposed to continuing it to the next council meeting.
Any questions for Ms. Yelton?
So they committed to replanting or at least something similar to what was there, just from a landscaping perspective?
Yes, he believes that they're only removing one tree and they were willing to replant that one tree someplace else.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I would move we waive the rules and pass ordinance 34-09-23 on first reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the rules and pass ordinance number 34-09-23 on first reading. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I move we approve ordinance number 34-09-23 as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 34-09-23. This is a roll call vote.
Mr. Aaron?
Aye.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
No.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Sparks?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
8 aye, 1 nay, the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miscellaneous number 2, council to consider resolution RC-41-23, a resolution regarding the 2024 high assessed value levy growth appeal. Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller, and this item is integrated with the budget that you just saw presented, and as referenced during that presentation, the city has been for quite a while now experiencing significantly high growth in assessed value, and one of the ways that works with our budget is there is a feature in Indiana law that if you do have a taxing unit that's in a community experiencing that high levy growth, there is the ability to appeal to the state to have your maximum property tax levy adjusted to reflect that growth, because they recognize that you can do so and still protect the taxpayers without raising your tax rate. And so this is something we've been doing for the last few years, but what it does require is the council to officially authorize me in my position to submit that request to the State Department of Local Government Finance, and specifically it lists in there that that has to be done by October 19th. So that's the purpose of this resolution.
One more caveat that I would add to that is that it's very, a select few list of entities that are even allowed to
Correct.
apply for this. So,
Correct.
I appreciate your work on that. Can I have a motion for,
Mr. President, I move to approve Resolution RC 4123.
Second.
there's a motion and a second to approve Resolution RC-41-23. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miscellaneous number 3, council to consider appointments to the Advisory Council on Disabilities. Mr. Light.
Thank you, President Smith. Happy birthday. Maybe the last item between you and the birthday cake. But thank you for your attention to all the items this evening and the other members of council as well, certainly. We're pleased to present to you 2 recommended appointments for the Advisory Council on Disabilities. You worked with the mayor earlier this year to create this council to raise awareness and support for individuals within our community that have disabilities and for their caregivers and loved ones, and also to help to facilitate and convene a lot of organizations around town that are doing some wonderful things in this space. So we've had an opportunity to meet with a lot of people that are interested in this effort, which has been really encouraging, and we have 2 individuals that we're recommending for your approval. There are 5 mayoral appointments that we have finalized this week as well. And I want to give particular appreciation to the mayor for pushing this forward, but also to Lexi Rock for her work, our new community relations manager, who has jumped in on a lot of things, including this advisory council, and is going to be a key piece to that effort going forward. So Jeff Huffman and Jennifer Sell are the recommendations for appointment to the council, and I appreciate your support and consideration.
Mr. President, I enthusiastically would move to appoint these 2 nominees.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to appoint the nominees as presented. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 9-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. I pray to God that no one has any council comments, but if anybody does, this is your time.
Birthday. Should we sing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Aaron. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
When is your birthday, Mr. Boyd?
Really should decide Mr. Boyce singing on his own.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You guys have heard that. Too many of you have heard that, yes.
Any other comments? We are adjourned.